Welcome to my channel, I'm Shin. In this video, I'm gonna talk about what it's like to grow up in Japan as a foreigner. 僕は日本生まれの中国人です。中学は中国北京の現地校、そして大学はアメリカロサンゼルスの UCLA に通いました。僕は去年大学を卒業して日本に戻ってきたので、今まで合計18年間日本で過ごしてきました。I've put the timestamp in the description below, so feel free to check out the topic you are interested in. Let's talk about language and culture first. Personally, I've never had any problems with language or culture because I grew up like other Japanese kids. I grew up in this Japanese cultural environment since I was born, and everything comes so natural to me. Culturally, I'm very Japanese for sure, so I've never experienced any types of barriers in terms of language and culture. Socializing with other kids or making friends wasn't difficult for me. On the other hand, I've seen some of my foreign friends at school struggle with making friends and mingling into the Japanese social groups, most likely because they didn't spend long enough time in Japan as I did, and there are some sorts of cultural barriers between them and Japanese people. The next one is cultural identity. I still remember that when I was in elementary school, I was pretty insecure about myself being a foreigner, regardless of my language fluency, because Japan is an extremely homogeneous country. Many people in the society don't like cultures or people that are too different from theirs. Being a foreigner in Japan basically puts you in the minority group, which is 2% of the entire population that stands out from the crowd, usually not in a positive way if you know what I mean. It was until I experienced a different culture in China that, because I really enjoy the culture and the time I spent with people there, I experienced a huge shift in my cultural identity. I no longer care about how I'll be judged by Japanese people and the society as a foreigner, and I started to embrace my diverse cultural identity as an asset. Let's talk about pros and cons of growing up in Japan as a foreigner. I think the good thing about my cultural experiences is that I get to speak two different languages and have a better understanding of each culture than most people do. I've developed insights on how Japanese and Chinese people speak, behave, and think differently in different situations. So it's much easier for me to interact with people from each cultural group in a more natural manner, if it makes sense. For example, I always pay for my own bill if I'm with Japanese friends, but probably will take turns to treat each other if I'm with Chinese friends. When Japanese friends try to offer some sorts of help, I usually will say it's okay, thanks, because I understand tatemae and honne culture in Japan, which is usually about pretending that you care about something while you actually don't give a shit. However, if it's a Chinese friend, I'll probably accept their offer because it's more likely that they really want to help you. And if I reject their kind offers too much, it can be rude and disappoint them by making them think that you don't see them as true friends that you can rely on and ask for helps. However, the downside is that you'll feel you are marginalized from both cultural groups in a sense that you don't know where you really belong. During the early age, I was struggling with figuring out my own cultural identity. It's hard to find a true sense of belonging because there aren't that many people who share the same cultural experiences. For me, as I got to experience more non-Japanese cultures later on, I realized that having a diverse cultural background is nothing but a gift. The older I got, the more I learned to appreciate my cultural identity. So if you have experienced or are experiencing something similar, get this, my friend, which is what I truly wanted to tell my younger self. Don't let the environment bury your true identity. Embrace and take pride in your authentic cultural identity, and trust that it will surely become your invaluable assets in the future. So stay confident.
Hey, bro.
Now let's talk about a heavier topic, which is discrimination. As far as I know, many Japanese people hold strong stereotypes about foreigners. It's almost an unspoken consensus that foreigners are sometimes known as troublesome, unhygienic, or even dangerous. I think the main reason is that most of the people in Japan are indifferent about different cultures, and schools don't teach their kids about those cultural stuff. I'll say many people in Japan are pretty ignorant about foreigners, and they love generalization using their own stereotype that's oftentimes instilled by the media. I've personally experienced many situations in Japan that I think are discriminatory, such as seeing employees changing their attitude in a restaurant or a convenience store, or staring at me like this on a street or in a subway when hearing me speaking a foreign language.
Don't look at me like that.
And I'll assume that the amount of uncomfortableness you might experience in daily life will be much more if you look different than Japanese.
I'm not saying you, I'm just saying.
I think it has gotten much better in recent years, but I think it's true that many people in Japan have a sense of rejection towards foreigners, consciously or unconsciously. Of course, it depends on the individual, so I can't generalize. Next, let's talk about how I see Japanese society. In my opinion, Japanese society is one of a kind in the entire world. And if you want to survive in this society for a long period of time, you have to follow their unspoken rules very carefully. You might think that it applies to every country, bro. But here's the difference. Having experienced Japanese, Chinese, and American cultures in my life, what I can say with confidence is that Japanese culture punishes the outsiders, people who don't behave the same way others do, so much harder than any other cultures. I'm not gonna dive into too much details in this video because it's gonna be a lot.
I can't do that.
Japanese society almost has zero tolerance for people who don't follow their rules, such as honne and tatemae, reading the air, and respecting privacy. To not be excluded from Japanese society, we all have to learn those unspoken but deep-rooted rules, and it can be really challenging for many foreigners in the beginning. What I want to say is that probably many of you think Japan is such a cool place to visit and travel. The food, the culture, the people are really nice. I agree. But the thing is that growing up in Japan as a foreigner is totally different story than visiting Japan as a foreigner. I'm curious if it's the same for other countries. So if you have similar or different experiences, definitely leave a comment down below. I'm very excited to hear and learn about your life story as well. Also, if you have any topics that you are interested in and want me to talk about in the future, please let me know. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Your support means everything. Thank you so much.